Good evening, everyone. We'll give everyone just a couple of minutes to get into the meeting, and then we'll go ahead and start. We'll get started in just a couple of minutes after we let everyone have a chance to get into the meeting. We'll get started in just a minute, everyone. I see that there's a hand up. If it's a technical question, we could answer it now. Otherwise, we'll wait until we get to our question and answer portion of the presentation. Seeing that the hand is still up, I think we could go ahead and take it. I'm going to assume that it is a technical issue. So Sean, if you're able to unmute the participant, that would be great.
Sure. Tatiana, your line is unmuted. Go ahead.
Oh, you'll have to unmute on your end as well.
Yeah, Tatiana, if you could unmute your line also.
Sean, I pushed the button, ask to unmute, but actually it doesn't seem like it. I'm not sure if it unmuted them.
Yeah, I'm still seeing the icon with the microphone with the red line through it.
I think, Tatiana, if you'd be able to send us an email to our clean transportation incentives at arb.ca.gov email address, and maybe Sean or Heather could drop that into the chat for everybody as well. And that way, if you're having a technical issue, you could let us know that. So while that's being worked on, I will go ahead and get our meeting officially started. Actually looks like we had a lot of registrations, but we don't have that many attendees, but it is about that time. So I will get started. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our 5th monthly evening community meeting to get your feedback on the fiscal year 2023-24 proposed funding plan for clean transportation incentives. I'm Stephanie Parent, the lead staff person for this year's funding plan. Our amazing funding plan team is also here this evening. Here are a few details before we get started with our meeting. This meeting is being recorded and will be available on our meetings and workshops webpage in about 2 weeks, along with the attendee list. And staff will drop in a link to where you can find that information in about 2 weeks' time. All of the meeting materials, like the agenda and, well, in this case, we don't have slides this time, can be found on that webpage. Staff will put the link in the Zoom chat. To ask questions or comment, please use Zoom's raised hand feature. If there are disruptions or misuse of Zoom during the meeting, we'll reschedule and notify you. For security, we need your names visible in Zoom. If you called in by telephone, we'll identify you by the last 4 digits of your phone number when you raise your hand. So for today's meeting, we have a few important agreements for CARB staff and attendees to follow. Number 1, be respectful. Let's be kind and create a comfortable space for everyone to share their thoughts and experiences. Number 2, take space and/or make space. If you're usually quiet, challenge yourself to contribute more. If you talk a lot, leave room for others to participate. Number 3, listen to understand. Listen without judgment or jumping to conclusions. Number 4, consider equity. We aim to develop solutions with fairness and equal treatment in mind. Recognize that not everyone starts from the same place, and some face unique advantages or barriers. People from all over California are here to work together on the Clean Transportation Incentives Funding Plan. Each community has its own unique challenges and advantages, making diverse perspectives crucial. Next slide, please. So let's discuss today's agenda. We have our introduction right now until about 5:10 p.m. Then we'll have up to about an hour and 40 minutes to discuss the proposed funding plan for the clean transportation incentives. And if we need a break, we'll take a 5-minute break partway through our meeting, probably around 6 p.m. Lastly, we'll have about 5 minutes to wrap up our meeting. So for those of you who are new or maybe need a quick reminder about how these meetings run, let's discuss our evening community meetings and their purpose. Typically, our annual funding plan development process involves daytime public workshops and work group meetings on various incentive projects. However, we understand that community members face unique challenges attending these meetings compared to industry, government, and non-governmental organization representatives. So this year, CARB is hosting monthly evening community meetings to make it easier for community members to engage with us. These meetings cover the same topics as our daytime workshops. Our goals for these community meetings are to provide a space for community voices and priorities, brainstorm solutions for clean transportation needs, highlight key funding plan information, foster ongoing communication between staff and the community. While our daytime workshops have concluded for this funding plan phase, you can find previous meeting details on our website, which staff shared in the chat. If you have specific questions about those, we're happy to delve into those slides further. The funding plan team wants to ensure that we provide community members with a wide variety of ways to collaborate with us. One way to collaborate with us is to participate in these evening community meetings. However, we understand if you do not feel comfortable speaking in these forums. We have an open door policy and are currently scheduling meetings with community members or community groups who would like to meet one-on-one with us. Currently, our proposed funding plan is posted on our website for public review and comment through Monday, November 6th. The link that we dropped in the chat earlier has a link to the proposed funding plan. My apologies, I lost my place. Earlier in the funding plan development process, we created a community survey. Staff analyzed the results of the surveys and have incorporated a summary in the proposed funding plan. you can still fill out the survey and we will use that feedback in our future efforts. Now I'll hand things over to my colleague, Sean, and we'll open it up for any questions on the proposed funding plan or any questions you may have on the previous evening community meetings.
All right, thanks, Stephanie. As a reminder, please use the raised hand function by pressing number 2 if you're calling in by phone, and to please state your name and affiliation before asking a question or making a comment. And then also, you can also email questions to Clean Transportation's Incentives at arb.ca.gov. All right. And I'm not seeing any hands yet. We'll give it another minute.
And Sean, I'll jump in and say that I don't remember if I mentioned it, that we are able to accept emailed questions if you prefer to email the question to the Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov. Or if Sean, if you had said it, I apologize. I missed it.
All right, we have a raised hand from Paul Hagen. Paul, your line is unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. I guess I'll just take advantage of the time here, if there are no questions. I just want to generally ask if the time frame that you've mentioned several times in the past and posted as far as funding, the rest of the funding process before the funding is actually available to folks, if that's still the same. And if you have anything to say about how things are changing as far as the federal incentives that start January 1st. I know that this is not a forum for that in particular, but if you have any advice for folks who may be waiting as that has the federal program changes in January, seem like they're making it a lot easier for people to be able to purchase vehicles. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul, for your questions. So as far as the first question, I think you were asking about the time frame for once the funding plan, if it is approved by the board, that how long it would take for those funds to be available within the various projects that we have. Hopefully I understood that correctly.
Yeah, yes, that's right. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, and so that kind of varies based on each project. You know, it does take time for CARB staff to, after the funding is approved, to then create some grant agreements for that funding to be available. And I would say that it varies based on each project. Exactly how long that takes for that to be available, I feel like that's hard for me to say. I don't know if anybody else can provide a general timeline. Like, can we say like maybe 6 months, give or take? But I can't say that's a hard and fast rule.
So, for example, the Clean Cars, the money that would go to Clean Cars for All program, as an example, we're still waiting on that to know exactly when that money would be available, or is there money currently available in that program? I'm a little confused now because of there are some changes that have taken place with some of the programs, but right. I guess
like with Clean Cars for All, I can say that I know that that program, the air districts, you know, for those 5 air districts, they all have plenty of funding. And as far as the statewide portion of the program, that is still being developed. So that program is not quite open yet.
Okay.
Thanks,
And-
Stephanie. Just wanted, oh, go ahead, Aaron.
No, I was just going to add on the statewide program. We anticipate that opening early next year. So I was just going to add that a little bit. So go ahead, Grace.
Thanks, Aaron. Yeah, just to jump in on your question with respect to the federal tax credit that's coming online beginning in January. I'm assuming you're referring to the used tax credit that's going to be available for lower income consumers. At this point, we don't have any details on how that's going to be implemented, but I don't know. I know that tax credit will be available for lower income consumers, but there will be an MSRP cap on the used vehicles that will be eligible for the tax credit. And so I hope that helps answer at least a portion of your question.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Paul.
And I was just going to add that in general, if we have a brand new program that we're just starting up, it typically takes longer. As you might imagine, we'll have an implementation process that starts out with public work groups in the spring. And then a lot of times there'll be a solicitation in the summer where people can apply for funds in that program. And so then that could be like into the fall or winter before the money is available. But for our ongoing programs, typically that are already up and running, it's only a matter of a few months, but that can vary for when the funds are available.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank-
Thanks, Paul. We have another raised hand from Bill Abudi. Bill, your line is unmuted. Please talk.
Thank you. Good evening. Bill Abudi with AB Trucking, and I'm also community. I wasn't really
I just wanted to check, is it just me?
hello? Can you hear me?
Oh, there it is.
Oh, there we go, Bill.
Yeah. Sorry. Bill Abudi with AB Trucking in Oakland, and I'm also a community member. Was interested to see about your incentives. Are we discussing heavy duty trucks and infrastructure for those trucks? So I'll tell you one of the comments that I would make, which I've made before at several CARB meetings. As I apply for grants, it's very difficult unless it's HVIP and the dealer's doing it. But it's very hard to get answers from whether it's CARB or Bay Area AQMD on other grants that could be stacked with the HVIP or any programs that could be helpful. It seems to be like everybody's in a compartment by themselves. They have their specialty, and you have to go through 3-4 different people constantly being referred, or otherwise you have to hire a consultant to do your grants for you if you can find them at a reasonable rate to do that. So it seems like most of the bigger companies hire people, they go after grants, and they try and push them down to the little companies. But also, you know, one of the issues that we see is charging the sales tax on the total price of the truck rather than the net, or exempting sales tax from zero emission trucks. That seems to be an issue here because it can add, in my case, it would be $45,000 that devalues the grant that you're giving. And if New Jersey can have a tax exempt on zero emission, I don't know why California can't get that through. FET, I know, is on a federal level. That's another big chunk that devalues the grant on a federal level. And I know that there was a bill talking about getting rid of the FET. I don't know where that progressed. So I'm interested to hear from your side where we are with the FET, if you've heard anything different, because I haven't heard anything. And also on the sales tax, that was supposed to be something that CARB would look at and push through legislation, because that would give us the first trucks that everybody is pushing. I'm in the drayage business, and it's really, really difficult to buy zero emission truck next year with the first version of the trucks coming out that are too heavy, no infrastructure. So yeah, I can get the truck, but I can't fuel it or I can't charge it. So I don't see anything on the horizon. Everybody's telling us that it's going to be at least 3 years before we get the infrastructure. They're working on it, but we're being pushed into a corner here. So I don't know how CARB is going to deal with that issue. We're willing to try these trucks. We want to get them out to market. We want them to be better. But having a 26,000 pound truck, 29,000 truck, we can't carry the cargo. We can't make a living. And you're taking those tools away from us. So I'll stop there and get you guys to respond to some of these.
Hi, Bill. Thank you so much for your I want to start with information on stacking. We know that there's a large landscape of incentive programs. There's a number of different state incentives, many of which are administered or programmed here at CARB, many others that are at other agencies, and then there's other local incentives. And so we understand that there's a lot out there. It can be hard to know what's available to you and how they might be able to stack or interact with each other. We have done our best here at CARB to try to make that information clear for HFIP, which sounds like you're familiar with, and that's great. We've been trying to clarify the where stacking is allowed. We made some changes last year, and we've tried to expand all that on our website. And we also rely on our dealers. As you said, part of what makes HFIP so easy to work with is that it's the dealer who's the one doing all the paperwork, being the interface between you, the fleet, and the incentive program itself. So we also rely on our dealers to be able to communicate, answer questions like that. So definitely encourage you to ask those questions of the dealer or dealers that you're working with, and they should be able to help you or at least direct you to the right places as it pertains to HFIP stacking. You also mentioned sales tax. We are aware that sales tax is a substantial issue. Tax is assessed on the total vehicle cost, not what you pay after incentives. And we know that those tax amounts levied by the state and federal governments can be really substantial. Even if a vast majority of the vehicle purchase price is being covered, the sales tax can add up to quite a lot. We understand this is an issue, especially for smaller fleets, which are who we're really trying to work with the most to reduce the barriers to accessing zero emission trucks. We don't have authority over sales tax, but we do continue to acknowledge that as an issue and raise that with our other state counterparts. And then finally, for infrastructure, another thing we acknowledge is a substantial challenge, again, especially for smaller fleets or fleets that would be reliant on public-facing infrastructure rather than building out their own. And of course, even for fleets building out their own, it's no easy feat. We acknowledge that CARB continues to work with our other state agency partners, including the California Energy Commission and the governor's office, as well as utilities across the state, to expand the availability of resources and information, and to make the whole infrastructure process easier, as well as connecting fleets to incentives. A really important tool that we've launched recently, we're really excited about, is called CalFleet Advisor, and I believe my colleague will drop a link to that in the chat. Thank you very much, Olivia. CalFleet Advisor is a kind of one-stop shop for information on how to employ a zero-emission truck. The program offers one-on-one help with an advisor to answer questions, help you navigate incentives, as well as other resources that may be available to you. And this goes along with all of our programs really gearing themselves to better meet the needs of small fleets, including changes that we're making in HVIP this year that include increasing the voucher amounts for small fleets. And I also want to give Olivia an opportunity to talk about the HVIP complement program, ISEF, the Innovative Small E-Fleets program. Olivia, if you're available to speak, otherwise I can give a brief summary. If you're not, just shoot me a message.
Sure, I can just let you guys know that ISEF is open. It's the Innovative Small E-Fleets program. It's a set aside within HVIP designated for small fleets. So that is fleets with 20 or fewer vehicles and less than $15 million in revenue a year. So right now there is funding in ISEF. I will drop some more resources in the chat if you're interested in seeing if you might qualify for that program. ISEF offers increased vouchers. Right now it's double the HVIP voucher to either purchase a vehicle, or you can also look into a partnership to explore leases, a truck as a service agreement, or things like that. So I'll drop some more resources in the chat right now if you're interested in learning about that program.
Thanks, Olivia.
I actually got 2 vouchers from the ISEF, and yes, it's a very generous program. But just imagine that it's still, after taxes, it brings up the price up to a diesel truck equivalent. So it's kind of a toss-up. If we want to get these trucks out, and I realize that we really need to get them out and being used. One thing I'll tell you that is happening at the Port of Oakland, the port and the city are working on lifting the restriction on the weight within the port complex, which is a big plus. And that's why I really want to consider this and get them out, so we can help develop the technology and build the infrastructure. But it is an incentive program, so it really has to give me an incentive to do this because it's the first. And we see when somebody goes first, we did that with our yard tractors back in 2018. We're the first in the Bay Area to do it. There's 80 plus running around now because people could see it, touch it. They see how it works. We can tell them pros and cons. And right now it's all pro. I thank CARB for doing the HVIP program, doing the ISEF like the HVIP program. I'm your poster child for it. That's how all grants should be, right? Don't try and get me to calculate emissions and this and that. I'm not in that business. I just want to move cargo. It's my business to move your cargo, get it on the shelf for you. So I really appreciate you guys. I hope you take it as a positive. We all have to work together on this, but also feel our pain because it's almost like a gun to our head. And it's like, we're not going to be able to make a living if we're not cooperating.
Thanks, Bill. We definitely understand the power of show, and thank you for being one of those fleets doing the showing. Glad to have you on board, and we will continue to keep in mind all of the other barriers that remain and work on them in every way we can. Thank you.
Okay. Not seeing any other hands at this time. Is there, checking with Tiffany, is there any emails coming into our clean transportation incentives inbox?
Hi, Sean. Monitoring the inbox right now, and currently I see no emails as of right now.
Okay. Oh, we have a hand from Ryan Lau. Ryan, your line's unmuted. Please state your name and affiliation.
Yeah, hi. my signal's a little spotty here, so hopefully you can hear me. Ryan Lau with AC Transit, the public transit agency in the San Francisco East Bay. So maybe this is not the appropriate forum. I don't even know if it falls in your bucket. I know it's a CARB program. It's related to the announcement that just went out, I think, earlier today regarding AB 680. It's I think it's in sort of the program making process, so maybe there's no information about it, but it's workforce development requirements related to the greenhouse gas reduction fund grants. Wanting to see if there's any information that you guys could share, whether it is just related to sort of construction jobs, or if it's sort of longer term as well. You know, GGRF funds all sorts of different things. So I'm just trying to wrap my head around it a little bit more. I know that there's a working group session later this month, but I'm just trying to get a preview. Thanks.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for your question. Yeah, so the workshop that's being held on the AB 680 requirements for the climate investment guidelines, that is being managed by a different group within ARB. However, I can say that some of our programs do now require well, not necessarily workforce development requirements, but labor standards with respect to some of our heavy duty programs. But we'd be happy to connect you with the folks that are going to be running the workshop that's coming up. I believe it's next week, to see if we can get some info for you.
Okay, appreciate that. Thank you.
All right, we have another raised hand from Paul Hagen. Paul, go ahead. Your line's unmuted.
Thank you again. Just a quick question on stacking going forward. My understanding is that without the CVRP, that there basically is no, for low income folks, the program we go to is Clean Cars for All, and there would not, excuse me, there are no other programs that would be stackable with that. Am I correct in that?
Thanks for your question, Paul. That is an excellent question, considering that CVRP is nearing completion. So the answer to your question is yes, there will be stacking opportunities between the Clean Cars for All program and the Financing Assistance for Lower Income Consumers program.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. And the Financing Assistance program, the interest rate is what again? Is it 8%?
It's capped at 8%. There is a little bit of a nuance. So a consumer that comes through the Clean Cars for All program that get an eligible vehicle, they can stack that with the financing portion of the Financing Assistance program. However, if they do not have a vehicle to scrap, they would just go through the Financing Assistance program for the financing portion and the grant portion of that program.
So if they didn't have a vehicle to scrap, they still could get the grant from Clean Cars for All, as well as apply for the financing.
So if they almost, so if they don't have a vehicle to scrap, they're eligible to get a grant through the Financing Assistance program.
Okay.
And also utilize the financing portion of that program as well.
Okay, got it. And just to mention, I mean, 8%, to me, I don't know. It seems like not a bargain, right? To me, I don't know. What other kind of feedback or responses you've gotten to that, but that's just to put that out there. And that's it.
So you're saying that the interest rate is a little too high, the cap?
It seems high to me. I mean, I'm low income, and I have, tried to keep my credit rating decent over the years. And, when I go to my credit union, I think 2 months ago, it was under 4%, I think, or a little bit over 4%. And I don't know if that's how the 8%, up to 8%, how that was arrived at, or it just seems high to me. Yeah.
Great. Thanks for your feedback. Yeah, we've gotten comments kind of across the board with respect to the APR, but that's certainly something we can take in consideration and reevaluate.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
All right, we have another raised hand from Robert Naylor. Robert, your line's unmuted.
Okay. Hi. Two questions. Number one, I noticed, but please confirm or deny that there's no new transit bus money in the 2023-2024 budget that would find its way into the HVIP program.
Hi, Robert. Yes, that's correct. The fiscal year 23-24 budget did not include any additional funding through HVIP for transit. However, the budget did include new appropriations for zero emission transit buses through other programs managed by CalSTA. So I believe funding went to TIRCP as well as LCTOP, which are two acronyms. Don't ask me to explain what they mean because I've long forgotten, but both of which are offering new funding for zero emission transit buses. However, funding remains available in HVIP, both standard HVIP and in a set aside for transit specifically. So transit agencies are able to request money through HVIP now.
Thank you. Then the other question is, in the program, the $28.6 million from the AQIP funding, it says that there's support for clean off-road equipment. Would that be available for small commercial harbor craft, such as small ferries?
That appropriation was for our Clean Off-Road Equipment Voucher Incentive Project, or CORE. And if Todd is available, it looks like he is. I will allow him to answer what is eligible in CORE.
Yeah, so right now, those would be eligible in CORE. We have money available right now in CORE for Harborcraft all across the state. That's it right now. Looking future for next year, CORE was not given that much money. Right now, we're asking the board for $14.3 million for all 10 categories in CORE. We've talked about this in past meetings that we're looking at just keeping CORE to small businesses only. So something to think about in the future. But if you're looking to upgrade your ferry to zero emission, CORE has funding available right now, and I'll be more than happy to answer questions off on the side, one-on-one with your company. That would be great, and just reach out and contact me, and we'd be happy to meet with you and talk to you about those opportunities.
That's great. Thank you very much. We'll follow up.
Looks like we don't have any raised hands at this time. I don't know if we have anything coming in on the email.
No emails.
Well, I did, sorry to just interrupt there, Sean. We did prepare some kind of open-ended questions to try to get more feedback from everyone regarding our proposed funding plan that we posted on October 6th. And so I can verbally ask one of those and see if maybe that generates any thinking from anyone. Hold on just a second. I just need to check something here. Oh, okay. Okay, so in the category of the funding allocations, CARB had some discretion on how to divide up the available funding for light duty purchase incentive projects. So those would be the projects like Clean Cars for All, the Financing Assistance Project, and others. Do you think the way that the funding has been proposed to be allocated meets the needs of those projects? And I should have pulled up my slide on this. I believe we were proposing 28 million for Clean Cars for All, 28 million for the Financing Assistance Program, as well as someone will have to remind me, I think it's 18 million for e-bikes, 5 million for Access Clean California, and 1 million for the California Integrated Travel Project. So we're interested to hear from you, if you think that, allocating money that way, funds that way would be appropriate, or if people feel that, maybe a project should get more or less money than what staff had proposed.
We have a hand raised. Paul, your line's unmuted.
If somebody else wants to speak, that's fine. Since there was a little gap there. When I first saw those those numbers, I thought they were by comparison, I think is in particular to the school buses, the amount that the school bus program is potentially receiving, which I think is like 300 and some million. Am I correct on that? That these numbers were, I was wondering why these numbers by comparison were so much less. And if I remember at one point several months ago in looking at the CVRP monies, they had posted they had like $300 million at that time. So again, it's for consumers and individuals like myself, these numbers and pieces of information that come out are a little hard to juggle. But if I could get a response on that, if possible, that was my initial reaction when I saw the numbers.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so I think, where it sometimes can be hard to understand that, the legislature appropriates money to CARB, and sometimes they specify exactly how much money and what it can be used for. And so the bus money, the school bus money that you were referring to, that was a specific amount appropriated to us to use for that specific purpose. Whereas the amounts that I just mentioned, now I forget what the total pot was. Was it 140 or 170 million?
Is 80 million within the light duty vehicle purchase incentive category.
Thank you, Grace. And so we were appropriated that total amount, and then we are allowed to shift or determine how much each of the projects that fall under that grouping can get. So sometimes we don't have a say necessarily in exactly how large the pot of money will be, but once we are appropriated the money, we can decide how to divide it up among various programs. So hopefully that helps to provide a bit more explanation for kind of the difference between appropriations by the legislature and the governor in the state budget, and then how, as CARB staff, we are able to say that we're proposing allocations to such various programs.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. So do you happen to know, like in the budgets and the funding for the last couple of years, has there been I'm sorry, I don't have the numbers in front of me either, a decline in the amount of money for the light duty vehicles? And if so, why has that happened?
I believe I might need someone else to help answer this, but I believe last year's amount of money, it was a lot larger. And I believe part of the reason for that was that there was like a one-time funding that increased the amount. And then there was also a lot of money for starting off the new statewide Clean Cars for All program. But I see Grace has turned on her camera, so she probably has a better information to share.
Okay.
Yeah, so a few years back, the legislature passed the zero emission vehicle package. Initially, it was 10 billion spread out over 5 years between multiple agencies, not just CARB, but the Energy Commission, the Public Utilities Commission. And so last year, or I guess this year, because of the projected budget deficit, the legislature did shift some funding around, but they were able to keep the ZEV package whole. And so we're still maintaining that consistent 10 billion funding, but it's now spread out over 6 years. And so even though if you look at the 5 or the 6 years of funding, initially there was a lot of money fronted up front with respect to the CVRP program. During the first year of the ZEV package, that was like 515 million that was appropriated to CVRP, and that was intended to last over multiple years. And so even though it looks like the numbers are declining from year to year, actually that upfront appropriation kind of makes the whole ZEV package whole, for lack of a better term. But I hope that helps explain, answers your question.
Okay, so it looks like that was a one-time happening where that large chunk was available, and then things changed, and going forward that unless there's budget surpluses, that it won't change, it won't be increasing anytime soon.
Yeah, so the administration and the legislature have committed to this multi-year funding, but again, it's subject to future appropriation. And so like we saw with this year, there was a projected budget deficit, and so they did some funding shifts around. It gets kind of complicated and technical, but yeah, again, the commitment's there, but again, it's subject to future appropriation.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate you all walking me through some of these things. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Thanks, Paul.
Right. Okay, not seeing any other hands. All right, we have another raised hand from Bill. Bill, your line's unmuted.
I just wanted to give you feedback on the Cal Fleet Advisor. I think it's a great idea here to do that. And it was announced at our truck work group meeting at the port, and I went to it. I filled out the questionnaire. I'm still waiting for a response though, and that was about 3 weeks ago. So it's a great concept, but I haven't seen it work yet. I'll let you know when it does.
Thanks, Bill. Just so I can do some follow-up for you. Did you do a form in person or did you do it on the website?
It's on the website. Yeah.
Okay, because I know they're doing some at in-person events, so I just want to make sure. Okay, cool. Thank you, Bill. I will follow up and hopefully we can get someone to get back to you.
Yeah, have a lot of questions, and I would like to get some help. So I really want to get my hydrogen trucks. So looking forward to it.
All right, thank you.
We have another raised hand from Ryan Lau. Ryan, go ahead.
Hello. Since it's a little quiet on the home front, I thought I would just jump in again. Ryan Lau from AC Transit. So One of the things that I think our team has proposed in the past, and I know that you guys are really working to sort of working toward this goal, but almost like a concierge service between CARB and the CEC to sort of coordinate infrastructure deployments along with vehicle deployments. The only thing that I would add to that, so I love that idea, and I know that you guys are working on it, is really rolling in the utilities, because as I think a lot of people have seen, when you embark on the journey of trying to do a infrastructure project for charging, you may get one answer and then you start planning it, and then you go back to the utility and they might have a completely different answer. And I don't know that there's anything maybe that you guys can do, but I think maybe coordinating early on with the utility might be a good thing. And I know that right now, it's sort of incumbent upon the individual agencies or fleets. But as we've seen here, there's varying levels of the sizes of fleets and agencies, and some have more or less capacity to do those sorts of things. And so if there's sort of state assistance in that respect, that I think that would be helpful for particularly the smaller fleets.
Hi, Ryan. Thanks again for highlighting the importance of coordinating incentives as well as between each other, but also incentives with the other wraparound services that are needed to deploy zero-emission vehicles, including, of course, infrastructure. We have a program, and unfortunately, I'm not the person to talk about this, but there is a program called Energize, which is a direct coordination between incentive programs. Energize is a coordination between the Energy Commission, CARB, our partners at CalSTART, as well as the utilities, that essentially tries to create this streamlined process for accessing both vehicle and infrastructure incentives, as well as connecting out to other resources. I'm going to drop a link to the Energize program website in the chat for you to get some more information. But I'll also give an opportunity in case one of my colleagues on the line has more information about Energize. If not, though, the website is a great place to start.
All right, I believe we have a question from our inbox.
Correct. So we have an email in our inbox from Mr. Steve Brindleborough. So the question is, how will transit agencies be funded to double their service?
Sure, I can, excuse me, I can address that. So the California Air Resources Board several years ago passed a regulation called Innovative Clean Transit that requires that transit agencies transition to zero-emission buses over a prescribed timeline with lots of different off-ramps and exemptions available. There are a lot of funding sources that currently exist. Many of them are legacy funding sources, funding from the FTA and the California State Transportation Agency, CalSTA, as well as funding through CARB, through HFIP. All of these funding sources are really geared towards helping transit agencies to adopt zero-emission buses, taking into consideration all of the special things that factor into how a transit agency adopts zero-emission buses, how procurement processes work, et cetera. So all of our programs really go to great lengths to ensure that they are making the process as easy as possible for transit agencies to access that funding. And the state continues to invest substantially in our transit agencies, including to help them switch to zero emission. We understand that transit is an important sector to help us reduce overall VMT, as well as to develop, advance, and further commercialize all of the zero emission technologies, the underlying technologies in buses that will then find their way into trucks and other heavy duty equipment.
We have a hand raised from Steve Bertelbaum. Steve, your line's unmuted.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to follow on to the answer to that question. We had a discussion with our agencies this last week about how they were going to double their fleet by 2030. And one big question that came up was, where are we going to put all those additional buses? So they need to invest in doubling their garage space or parking space or whatever it is, as well as all their charging stations. Is this part of what we can apply for in the funding that you're talking about?
Hi, Steve. So funding is available through HVIP as well as several other funding programs at the state for battery electric buses, but funding also exists for fuel cell electric buses. We understand that certain routes are not perfectly suited to battery electric buses, but thankfully there are several commercially available fuel cell electric bus models available that have comparable range to whatever conventional fuel buses that are currently in use. And as I mentioned, funding is available for both of those technology options. So transit fleets are able to pursue the solution or mix of solutions that work best for them to meet the needs of their customers.
But will we be able to buy the real estate to put all these additional buses overnight?
Well, one of the benefits and why I mentioned hydrogen fuel cell buses is that the footprint required is usually no different than conventional. It would be very familiar to any agency that currently runs compressed natural gas buses. The fueling infrastructure takes up about the same amount of space as conventional fueling infrastructure rather than having chargers at each stall. And the fueling times are similar. Range is similar to conventional vehicles, so there would be a one-to-one replacement expected for hydrogen fuel cell buses. As I mentioned, of course, there is a place for both of the technology options, and as we are seeing, transit agencies across the state are finding the solution or mix of solutions that work best for them.
Okay, but if we have 40 buses today and we're going to have 80 buses by 2030, we need to double the size of our garage.
When you say that you need to double the size of the fleet, is that just to serve the needs of your riders, expanding service?
Yes. CARB is
So I know
asking
that
to double service by 2030.
CARB, the only regulation that I'm aware of at CARB that pertains to transit agencies is the Innovative Clean Transit Rule, which is just a technology driving regulation. It does not make any requirements for changes to service. However, there could be requirements set by other agencies.
No, the scoping plan is asking doubling of transit service by 2030.
I wonder if this is related to reducing VMT and getting more people out of their cars. I'm not the expert to speak on the scoping plan. However, I can say generally that we recognize the importance of transit in the state here at CARB and across the state. And our funding programs like HVIP remain available to help transit fleets get zero emission buses. Programs like HVIP do not have a scrap requirement. So HVIP does not require that you get rid of a bus to get a new bus. And you can use HVIP incentives to acquire additional vehicles to increase the size of your fleet.
Okay, but we need to store those someplace. Can we buy the land? Is there funding for that?
Through HIP or other CARB programs, the answer is no. Our programs are focused exclusively on supporting vehicle purchases. However, I know that other state funding programs, including those administered by CalSTA, can be used for things like land acquisition. I'm not the expert to talk about that and would recommend talking to the experts at those agencies, or you can reach out to us and we can work with you directly offline to get you connected to the right people.
Great, thank you.
All right, thanks, Steve. Thanks, Matt. We have another raised hand from Ryan Lau. Ryan, your line's unmuted.
Yeah, hi. I figured I would take advantage of this unfettered access to CARB staff. So I know that historically CARB has funded like demonstration projects and the like for some new technologies, but as far as I am aware, there are no fuel cell over-the-road coaches, and I'm wondering if there might be some funding available for something like prototyping or something of the like. And I'm not sure if I'm being particularly articulate about that, but I think hopefully you know what I mean.
I'm not sure if we have Earl Landberg or Nathan Dean on the call to talk about our advanced technology demonstrations and pilots.
Yeah, I can chime in. Thanks, Matt. Nathan Dean, I'm the
Thanks,
manager
Nathan.
of the Emerging Technologies and Program sections, and I cover the demonstration pilot projects. So that's really good to hear that that's a technology type that you're interested in. So as it pertains to this particular fiscal year 23-24 funding plan, there was not a budget line item for demonstration pilot projects. So in this current fiscal cycle, we aren't looking to have new demonstration and pilot projects. That doesn't mean that it's not an important priority for CARB, and we definitely would want to talk to you offline about future funding opportunities and talk about this, as demonstration and pilot projects are important, and we would like to see some more in the future. Again, just this particular fiscal year, there's not a funding appropriation for demonstration pilots, but we're more than happy to talk to you about what technologies you'd like to see in the future for demos and pilots. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that hinges upon the California economy turning a corner, but yeah, no, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, it looks like we don't have any other raised hands at this time. I think it's a good time for a break. We'll take a quick 5-minute break and reconvene at 6:08. So everyone can stretch their legs to the glass of water. And we'll see you back shortly.
Okay, so by my clock, it is now 6:08. And so we can begin again. And I'll wait to make sure that Sean is back in the meeting. Okay, so Sean, I'll hand it over to you to see if there are more questions.
Yeah, I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time. Guess we'll check in with Tiffany. Are we any emails coming through?
No emails.
I can ask another one of the open-ended questions and see if that generates thinking from anyone. So I'll jump over to still within the funding allocations, but CARB also had some discretion on how to divide up the available funding for sustainable transportation equity projects. And so it's the same question as before is, do you think that the way that staff proposed to divide up the funding meets the needs of the projects, or could the funding, do you see that the funding could be divided up in other ways? And then to let you know, so the amount that was appropriated to CARB was $60 million, and staff proposed that 50 million of that would go to a variety of mobility projects, and then 10 million of that would go to planning and capacity building projects. And so we're wanting to know from you, does that seem like a good way to allocate the funds, or were there thoughts in looking at our proposed funding plan that maybe they should be divided up in different ways?
We have a hand raised from Paul. Paul, your line's unmuted.
Yeah, I was wondering, when you mentioned the capacity building, specifically, what is taking place currently? I assume that means that members of CARB, representatives of CARB, and other local agencies literally meet and have community meetings for feedback and information educating. Is that my correct understanding of what you're doing, or what the goal is? Okay,
so if I'm understanding the question correctly, you're wanting kind of a definition of what do we mean by planning and capacity building projects.
Yeah.
Okay, great. And so I don't know if there's someone online who could specifically better describe that better than I can.
Thanks. Yeah. So I'm Violet Martin. I actually lead CARB's efforts related to planning capacity building. And this particular category of funding was intended to support under resourced communities. They often lack the capacity and face challenges accessing our funding, but also it's intended to address community-specific priorities related to transportation. So we're trying to provide some flexible funding to support organizations build toward transportation equity within their community, to plan out clean mobility type projects for workforce training and development type programs, as well as outreach and community engagement, and really provide support for community decision making in the planning. So I think it's really about supporting education, training, peer-to-peer learning, and other tools that sort of facilitate or improve communication at the local and regional level. So that's generally the intent of it. Does that answer your question, or?
Yeah, generally, I wonder, because I've never, in San Francisco, I sort of keep my eyes out for these things, and I don't know of those kinds of meetings. I'm not aware of those meetings happening, community outreach in that specific way, and understanding also that there may be certain areas in the state that require more attention to a program like this, or through these funds, than others.
Yeah, it's in terms of the history, we've previously funded planning capacity through other clean mobility type efforts. So mainly the Sustainable Transportation Equity Project. There was a funding for both implementation type grants and planning specific efforts when the STEP program was first developed, and that was in 2019, 2020. Also through Clean Mobility Options, there was funding specific to our 4 communities to conduct transportation needs assessments. So it's perhaps possible that some of these projects have manifested through those programs, and so they're under that umbrella. It's hard to, we are just for the first time, I think in last year's funding, have a dedicated funding category for funding capacity building, just to be able to fund a more variety of those types of projects that are really based on community needs. So if it doesn't quite fit in a CMO or STEP, then we can still support their clean transportation equity related planning.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Again, I'm taking advantage of what seems to be available time here with you. So another question I had was my understanding was that there were going to be changes, expansions in the boundaries that identified underserved communities. Is that happening, or has that happened? My understanding was that it was going to be expanded significantly across the state in the 23-24 funding, if that's happened.
Paul, I apologize. I may have missed part of your question, but you were asking about the boundaries for like the disadvantaged communities, and that you understood that those were expanding.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if the map was expanding for those that program.
I know that recently the Cal EnviroScreen had expanded. I've not heard of newer efforts for that, but maybe I'm not quite in the loop for that.
Okay.
Lisa, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
Yeah, just Paul, I think what Steph just said is right. There aren't any current newer changes, but we are in the process of implementing the most recent round of changes, which your understanding is correct. The scope of what's covered under Cal EnviroScreen, the newest version, is a little bit broader, which for low-income communities and disadvantaged communities, that's going to provide some additional benefit. Some of the ways in which the programs before use the definition, unfortunately had kind of, it's hard to explain, but had inadvertently was missing communities right next to, or that were kind of half and half in boundaries and things like that. And so the most recent analysis took a broader look at the way that communities are designed, or the way that communities exist across public health impacts, environmental impacts, economic impacts, and did kind of redraw those boundaries a little bit. And so it will allow more people to benefit, more lower income and disadvantaged community members to benefit from the incentives that we offer.
Okay, yeah, I'm one of those people that was caught in the middle of that, and looking at the zip code areas, I didn't see any changes in that, but I did know it seems like the wording has changed a bit, where it says disadvantaged community or live near, which is a very open-ended word, which is hopefully of benefit to the consumer in the application process, rather than just the boundary, the EnviroScreen boundary itself. That they're allowing some leeway by using the word near, living near one of these communities. So I hope I'm correct in that.
Yeah, there is some information about, I want to say it's the quarter-mile buffer. And my colleague, Anthony Poggi, who's not able to be in these evening meetings, between he and I, we might be able to get you some more information about that, or to connect you to someone that might be able to better help you understand all of that.
That'd be great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
looks like we don't have any hands raised. Give it another minute here, and I'll turn it back over to you, Stephanie, if we don't have any other questions tonight. I guess we'll do a last call here for questions.
Did we get a question in the inbox? I think I see one for Clean Cars for All.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this question's from Daniel Torres for Clean Cars for All, and he's asking, does this program allow for someone to purchase a NGV vehicle or a natural gas vehicle? And I can go ahead and answer that. The answer to that is no. For the Clean Cars for All program, it is only battery electric, plug-in hybrid, fuel cell. And for the time being, at least until I think it's November 2024, you can get a conventional hybrid, but from that point on, those vehicles will be phased out.
Thanks, Grace. All right. All right, seeing no other raised hands, Stephanie, we can turn it back over to you.
Thanks, Sean. So just making sure. Okay, great. Thanks, Heather, for switching it over to the next slide. Just wrapping up in next steps, let's review the funding plan development schedule. So first of all, really want to thank everyone for collaborating with us this evening and for bringing all of your questions. We're really appreciative of the time that you took out of your regular commitments to be here with us and to help us make sure that our clean transportation incentives funding plan is a good plan. As I mentioned earlier, we want to provide as many opportunities as we can for you to collaborate with us. And we have these evening community meetings, and you can always reach out to us by email in the email address that we dropped in earlier to set up one-on-one meetings with us. And we'll show the email address on the next slide as well. A few quick reminders about any upcoming meetings. Staff posted the proposed funding plan to the CARB website on October 6th, and that opened up the formal 30-day comment period, and so that you can review and comment on the proposed plan. And you have through Monday, November 6th to submit comments through our website, and staff will go ahead and drop the link into where you can post comments, and I believe you can view other comments that have been posted there as well. We won't hold an evening community meeting in November since staff will present the proposed funding plan to the CARB board for consideration on November 16th. We will hold an evening community meeting on the third Tuesday of December, which is December 17th, and that'll be from 5 to 7 p.m. as usual. The agenda hasn't been set yet, but likely we'll use that time to reflect on how things went in the process this year, and then maybe do some kind of strategic planning and thinking for next year's funding plan and how that process will go. Assuming that the proposed funding plan is approved by the board in November, staff will begin to implement projects or changes to the projects beginning as early as December and then continuing into the next year.
Stephanie, this is Heather.
Yeah.
I thought you said December 17th, but on the slide it says the 19th. Could you just clarify what day the evening community meeting is?
Thank you. Sorry, I'm looking at my I can't even see it. Give me a second. I have to step away.
Sorry.
Okay. December. I'm not there yet. Oh, there. Oh, you're correct. It is December the 19th. I apologize if I had my notes typed up incorrectly. Thank you for asking that question to clarify. So yeah, December 17th, I'm sorry, 19th, I did it again, would be the next evening community meeting. So next slide, please. So thank you all again for joining us and collaborating with us this evening and throughout the whole process this year. You could reach us at the personal email addresses. Sorry. Or at the Clean Transportation Incentives at arb.ca.gov email address, which we had dropped in before, but we're happy to drop it in again if needed. Always remember to sign up for our listserv to make sure you're getting the emails, and staff will drop that in the chat as well. And so on behalf of the funding plan team and Freddie the cat here, it's my pleasure to have facilitated this discussion with you today. And I hope that everyone has a good and safe evening.